Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective. What is going on, everybody? My name is Justin Fensterman. Some of you know me as Fensty. Some of you know me as other bad names that I will not say on this stream. What stream is this? Fantasy Sports Daily, almost 500 episodes deep. So congratulations to all of you who've been riding with the Elite Mafia and this stream for nearly 500 episodes. Ray Flowers hosts Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Yours truly, Justin Fensterman, hosts every single Wednesday, the Midweek Madness edition. But the good news is for all of you, by the time you reach me, you know that your week, at least your work week, for some of you that work the Monday through Friday calendar, your week is half over. Hope you're dominating it. Hope you're crushing it. Hope you're crushing it in your fantasy football seasons. And that's where we come in at FantasyGuru.com. Still time to join the Elite Mafia. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Fensty Sports, F-E-N-S-T-Y Sports. Sometimes people cross the S and the T, and then they can't find me. And in our FantasyGuru.com Discord channels, especially the NBA Discord channel for DFS and betting at Fensty. I'm also hanging out as well in some of the other channels too for football and that Game Time channel where you can find me on SiriusXM every single Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's me and Russell Clay talking all things that happen during the day on Sundays, hitting that live late window, previewing Sunday and Monday night football, and then talking about the earlier games with all of you, letting you know, keeping you up to date on everything that happens. Elite Sports Game Time, Sundays, 6 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Fensty and Clay. You can also catch our big sister show, Elite Sports with Jeff Mans, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Ray Flowers joins him today. And also on Sundays, Jeff hosts the pregame show on SiriusXM Channel 87 with Bob Harris. That's at 11 a.m. Eastern. So there's a lot of the Elite Mafia with their paws on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Still time to join the party here for those that want to become part of the Elite Mafia. FantasyGuru.com. You got the shirt. We got the gear for you to our own store. You could go to that link right there, sign up for any of our packages when it comes to DFS betting. We also have other sports that are starting out really soon too. And that's why I've got so much to talk about today, where I could talk about what's coming up in NBA and also when it comes to content. And also we'll go over some streamers, waivers. We're getting some serious injury news that we got to talk about, especially at the running back position. And I'm going to cover it with all of you here, as I do every Wednesday. Starting on October 22nd, this show will become a hybrid show. The first half of the show will be basketball related. I'll talk all things DFS, then look at the wagering aspect of it a little bit for NBA, so I could give you all a glimpse of what we do throughout the NBA season and postseason at FantasyGuru.com. I do a lot of NBA content for the site. And then the second half, I did this last year, and I just want to make sure you all know that I'm not going to forget about football. I know what drives the bus. I know what pays the bills, and that's why still the majority of the show is, I said half, but it'll be a little bit over half, will be football-centric. Rich Miletto will join me throughout the season on Wednesdays to talk about the week's games, to talk about wagering, to talk about what to do if you continue to lose players. Heck, I've had a league where I've lost players at least to the IR, if not for the rest of the season. I've lost players every single week. I'm not giving up. I'm 0-4 in this league. I'm still trying to figure out a way. I've been close. It's just I've been also getting hit with highest scores too, which have been killing me in that league. But there's always a way, and there's always a waiver wire, unless you're playing those high-stakes leagues where there's no trading. But when it comes to the waiver wire, we've got you covered at FantasyGuru.com. Tyler Beaker does an excellent, excellent job, and that'll have a lot to do with the streaming conversation that we're going to have. I'll also take a look at some of your questions and comments too. But want to let you know, before I talk all things football, what is coming up when it comes to basketball content. Because here's the thing. Season-long NBA, season-long fantasy basketball, I love it. I joke that when it comes to the interest of the NBA, it's more DFS and betting and has been for a very long time at this point. And the NBA was one of the first to really embrace sports wagering and DFS for that matter too. So when it comes to the popularity, the instant gratification, the younger audience that really doesn't have that kind of patience for the most part, that's where the focus is going to be. So for season-long NBA, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because some of you have reached out to me, whether it's on X or in our Discord, asking about rankings and fantasy basketball content. So in the past, what we've done is we've had a partnership with Drafters, which we, by the way, still do. We talk Drafters all the time when it comes to football. They do have some basketball too. Do we have a direct link basketball partnership with them? No. But over the last couple of days, we've decided here, and especially the brass at Fantasy Guru, that preseason basketball content is going to happen. We're locked and loaded, the NBA team at fantasyguru.com. It's me, it's Scott Bonder doing some preseason NBA content for you. Hope to have most of it up by Friday. That's the goal right there, to have most of for those that are entering their fantasy basketball drafts. Will I kind of be using Drafters ADPs for best ball as kind of a backboard? Yes, but to me, when it comes to drafting, not too many differences in strategy when it comes to best ball and season-long fantasy basketball. Few minor things, and Scott Bonder wrote up a very nice article talking about the strategies that you will see on the site. But we'll get you your sleepers. I'll put together a list of rankings and everything. But beyond that, beyond the written stuff, also wanted to announce, and we do it every October before the NBA season, every Wednesday, because during the season, we have something called Watch Along Wednesday in our NBA chat, in our NBA DFS Discord chat, where I'm sitting there, and I'm watching the games anyway, but I'm sitting there in our Discord channel of the DFS NBA, just watching the games, reacting, what I'm seeing on the court. I'm a big believer. Seeing is believing. I'm a tapeworm, especially when it comes to basketball. So I'm going to be giving some of my live reactions, how I think rotations early on are going to play out. So that's what happens in season. Now, leading up to the season, tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, and for those that are part of fantasyguru.com and the Elite Mafia, I will write a note in our Discord to make sure you're all alerted and aware. It is the first of Fensty's Campfire Chats for NBA. Hey, man, I just want to talk basketball with all of you. It's not a hard concept. But this isn't really just my chat. Yeah, I'll have a few little bullet points. But just like Watch Along Wednesdays, it's your time. It's your chat. You want to talk DFS strategy? That's the time to do so. 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. Looking to stay there for about an hour. If the party continues, though, and we're rocking and rolling, having a good time, I'll stay longer. If I don't see anyone, I'll talk to myself. I don't care. I've talked to myself my entire life. You think I've got friends? I've got imaginary friends. Hi, nice to meet you. Meet them, say hi, take a bow. See, I've got imaginary friends. I could talk to myself. I could talk to a wall about Dryerland all day long. That's just how I'm programmed. But it would be a lot more fun if I get to talk basketball with all of you. Hell, we could talk about basketball from previous decades if you want. All things basketball. I'll have some DFS topics ready. I'll have some for those that are in their season-long fantasy basketball drafts and auctions for that matter. I'll be helping out there, talking about who's going where prior to some of my content going up over the next few days at the site. So this is your chat, 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. Accessibility, availability, how to get better. These are office hours. This is what we do. It's absolutely what we do. And the other night, after his radio show, Jeff Mans goes live in our Discord channel and talks about what he's trying to do, what he's trying to tweak when it comes to his DFS lineups, cash games versus single entry GPP. I'll say this when it comes to DFS, because it was an amazing 2+ hour chat. That's Jeff. That's just Jeff. Wants to be there for everybody, wants to explain his process. A lot of people just want picks and use it as a pit stop, and then they go along their merry way. But there's a contingent of all of you out there that want to learn the process, that should want to learn the process, so you can have confidence in building these lineups yourself. Maybe not fully. That's where we have a low list of analysts that will help you in our Discord. But You should want to learn how to do this so you can have confidence in your own picks, in your own tape watching. We'll always be here for you at fantasyguru.com. But I'm a firm believer that learning the process and trusting the process makes you a better fantasy player, makes you a better DFS player, makes you a better wagerer too when you've always got your head in the game and don't treat it like a part-time thing. That's what you have to do, especially if you're struggling in your fantasy football leagues. I've had teams that have been 0-7, and I've come back to just miss the playoffs by point differential. If I can do it, you could do it. 0-4, you could still come back, but especially for those leagues where 6 get in to the playoffs, there's still a chance that you could come back. It's not over for you and your teams just yet. But when it comes to the NBA and the content we're putting out, we will have preseason content out there, meaning getting ready for the season for you season-long players out there. And if you haven't listened yet, I will say this. When it comes to further season-long content, Fensty's Basketball Diaries, you can only listen to it if you are part of the Elite Mafia at fantasyguru.com. Every single week in season, I'm going over what I'm watching, literally giving you my game notes from my notebook. You want to call it a journal, a diary, whatever it is, it's Fensty's Basketball Diaries. I'm giving my game notes. I'm spotlighting players and teams. I'm actually mid-series right now, doing a 3-part series motivated by Kawhi Leonard because I was watching those old, Dos Equis commercials, Stay Thirsty, my friends, because I hadn't seen them in a long time. And those commercials would always make you thirsty for whatever drink. And so watching that and then the Kawhi Leonard weird stuff coming out about where he's getting his money, he's the most interesting man in the world. I'm doing a 3-part series where I go through every NBA team. And from a fantasy/DFS standpoint, I talk about the most interesting man on that team. It's a lot of DFS, but still value. And that's why Fensty's Basketball Diaries exists on the Elite Plus network as part of fantasyguru.com. It's not wherever you get your podcast. This is exclusively on our site. Ruby asking a question here. Ruby, Rubby, whatever. I'll say this. Yes, we are going to have some content. That's what I've been saying here for NBA. And I know a few of you have been hitting me up about that. Been waiting to get the final word and the green light about that to make sure that we are able to put it up on the site. We will. And I will have some kind of form of season draft guide for all of you. And even though I might be using kind of best ball ADPs and whatnot to use as a backboard, it doesn't matter for me. It will still be usable when it comes to season-long leagues. And you could just hit me up, too, in our Discord and our NBA channels. We do not have a season-long NBA channel. So if you want to ask your season-long questions in our daily specific channel, especially preseason where we really don't have any action going on outside of preseason, then you can put your question there and I will get to it and make sure that I answer it. Be careful betting on preseason, by the way, and playing in these contests for preseason. It's a crapshoot. We don't know how many players are going to play what minutes. We don't know who's going to be active and inactive. It's meant to see really what they have, 8th, 9th, 10th men. That's what it really is for preseason. Big time tune-up. So just be careful with the wagering. Wait for the season to start. So that's what's going on when it comes to NBA. Make sure you catch the podcast and make sure you join me tonight in our DFS NBA Discord channel for the Campfire NBA Chats, your chat to NBA greatness. Let's talk some football now, because here's what we got on the docket. And by the way, for those that don't know by now, I leave this up the entire stream. Why? Because I'm sure some of you are working. You're coming in and out, so you can see exactly what we're focusing on and be like, oh, Fensty talked about the Bills-Patriots. I'm going to go back and find that so I can find what exactly I'm looking for, the information there, because we got to talk about injuries because, yeah, injuries are just part of it. But I want to just say this quickly because I've seen I went on a little bit of a, let's just say, how can I put this nicely? Let's just say I went on a little bit of a tirade, a little bit on Elite Sports Game Time last week. And that's because I saw the usual list of complaints on how it's not fair when it came to Jaylen Warren. He's out in Ireland. Everything seemed all right with the reporting. Absolutely, it did. Adam Schefter was on it. Adam Schefter, I do the injury report for fantasyguru.com. So I watch specifically injuries and practices all week so we at the Elite Mafia can make sure we're getting the A-OK right info. I followed Schefter's report. I cited it in the article. Looked like things were going to be okay. Then I'm sitting there getting groceries at about 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern, and Jaylen Warren is ruled out. It sucks. It really does. And I can't speak on behalf of everyone when it comes to who's working the overnights, who's not. I don't know what kind of time everybody has, but this isn't going away. I'm not here to scold anybody that's complaining about the international games and the start time of these games and it impacting their sleep because they have to figure out if their questionable player is playing. We were all very encouraged on Saturday night that Jaylen Warren was going to be active Sunday morning in Ireland. It did not happen. But this isn't going away. It sucks. It really does. It's not going away. And I feel for the West Coasters. I feel even worse. If anything, it's only going to expand because for the next few weeks, we have morning action. Then it takes a little bit of a break, and then we're back to it again as we get into the double digits for weeks. It's not going away. And this is how you win. You want to win? You wake up and you make sure that that player is playing. I'm a light sleeper. Trust me, it stinks, but it's not going away. So yeah, we can complain and complain and complain about it, but there's nothing we can do about it. The NFL is going global as much as possible. Games everywhere. And so now because of that, if you play, you got to adapt. If you don't want to deal with that, play DFS and bet. But there's going to come a time when you have a very questionable player. Hell, I hate to say this, but if a player is very questionable in the late window of games on Sunday and they need warm-ups and pregame warm-ups to figure out if they're healthy enough to play, that's a tough position to be in too, but it's going to continue to happen. You have to have a backup plan ready. And yes, you have to wake up and make the change. Again, don't know everybody's work schedule. It's a bad situation, but there's nothing we can do. I can't say, hey, sign this petition of 2,000 and then we can get the NFL to listen to us and not put these games in the morning. It's going to continue to happen. We just got to deal with it. The best you can do is put in those reminders. And if you don't want to wake up, that's your decision. If you don't want to wake up and get that 100% that your player is in or out. But it's not going away. And after seeing all that, it's unfair. We all know the schedule when it comes out. We all do. We all have to deal with it. And that's staying ahead of the game. That's part of it right there. Preparing. Just like we got to prepare now because we've got bye weeks and we've got injuries and all of that. So getting a question from Ethan, let's talk about the news a little bit quickly because now we're starting to hear that Trey Benson is not looking good for this game against Tennessee. And it's a nice spot there. But what this means is if he's out, and Ethan asking me, safe pivot to DeMercado. It's a pivot. In terms of volume, yes, you would think that he should be able to land 10 carries in the event that Benson doesn't play because he's dealing with the knee injury. So that's one of those things. And remember, you're going to have to be careful of this because if they take this, we don't get a clear report or a clear designation or anything like that. And this is taken all the way up to game time. This is a 4:00 game. So you got to remember that. You got to have a backup ready if you're dealing with injuries when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals and Trey Benson. You're dealing with that. You're going to have to make sure you have a backup plan. So yes, it's DeMercado. Now, Michael Carter also there. Now, the big question is, how are the carries going to be split if Benson doesn't play? So we'll continue to monitor throughout the week. But right now, reports are looking, if I had to put it from the reports that I see, and I try to find multiple sources and all of that, because you just got to make sure you look in this day and age. You don't know who's fake. You don't know who's not. But right now, as it stands, for those that have Trey Benson, yes, and still have waivers to run, I would make sure you get DeMercado at least for this week. We'll have to just see what involvement Carter has, but DeMercado should be able to get a few carries at least, should be able to get, in my opinion, if Benson doesn't play, I want to put him in that 8 to 10 carry range like we've been seeing, maybe 10 to 12. So we'll just have to wait and see regarding DeMercado and if he's going to be able to fill that Benson role if he doesn't play. But that's what Benson was looking at going into this. So it's not a necessary safe pivot. Can I tell you he's going to score you 20 fantasy points? No. Can I tell you that he's going to catch a ball in the end zone? No, I can't do that. But if Benson doesn't play, can I say during bye weeks, this guy getting double-digit carries with no Benson? I can tell you that, yes. Can I see him maybe picking up a couple of targets in this game? Yes. Thought maybe Tennessee's defense would be, a little bit more stout here against running backs. Hasn't been the case here, so we could see him take advantage there. But also Carter is there, so you have to know that too. So it's hard to say safe there, but it's always great to see Ethan in our chat. What's going on, Hal? Happy hump day to you. Yes, Wednesday. Whoop, whoop. So we're looking at, guess what day it is? You know what day it is when you see this beautiful face. You know it's midweek at this point. Beyond now the Arizona situation, we got a situation with Tampa, because with Tampa, it's not looking good, because all of a sudden the reporting, as we got closer and closer to the show, reporting is signaling that Bucky Irving probably going to be out. And Bucky Irving might be out for multiple weeks because of this foot injury that he has. So that's something that we got to start watching out for too. Bucky Irving has been fantastic this year. And especially with how he's being utilized in the passing attack, from what we've seen, that's been saving it a little bit in certain weeks. But we just got to make sure that he's going to be in, because if you're seeing things like he's in a walking boot, definitely not encouraging. I've seen Adam Schefter throw out phrases like week to week. So we're not saying yet that he's definitely ruled out, but that's one of those situations where, again, a 4:00 game, Tampa Bay and Seattle, so you're going to have to have a backup plan. And if you didn't handcuff, then you got to start making sure that you're looking in that later window, because this is another situation where I feel like we'll know what we're dealing with, unlike Benson, where I really do think that could come down to pregame warmups. I feel like we will know by Friday whether or not Bucky Irving is going to be playing. So that's something we're going to have to watch out for. What sucks for all of us in fantasy is, and this you could say the same in Lamar Jackson, who hasn't been officially ruled out. But, even though he's not officially ruled out, apparently he's not going to play, and it could cost him more than just this game against Houston. If anything, Baltimore's got a bye in week 7. So maybe to protect their big-time quarterback, they end up giving Lamar these 2 games off. He has the bye week, and then you bring him back against Chicago and Miami in weeks 8 and 9. That seems to make sense. So for me, I've got a share of Lamar. I've already turned and started looking for backup, because it's just, again, we're seeing from the reporters out there, I believe I saw from Rappaport, another one week to week. When you see week to week, that's all but certain. What sucks about this whole thing for us is that until they're ruled out, these players, we can't really put them in those IR spots to add that extra player. So for me, I'm dealing with one team that has a very heavy dose of Chicago and Atlanta, both teams who are on a bye. So I'm desperate at this point, and I just want the Ravens to rule out Lamar Jackson. Just rule him out already so I can put him in that spot and grab somebody else. Already got my quarterback, but to get more depth there, because I am going to need another flex. I don't really draft thinking, I've got 2 guys with a week 5 bye. No, I really don't draft like that, because for 1 week, you can make it work. If you're active on the waiver wire, you can make it work. You pick up someone like a Woody Marks on the waiver wire, you can make it work. I know a lot of people did. So that's why you got to be active early. You can never be too safe, even if you're sitting there 4-0. But it would surprise me to see Lamar Jackson play. It would, at this point with Bucky Irving, think he's more on the side of not playing too. So these are a few impactful injuries. But speaking of impactful injuries, all eyes are going to be on whether or not the 49ers And it's unbelievable with the 49ers because every week, kind of like my fantasy teams, every week they're losing people every single week. And now it's to the point where after wondering, oh, Christian McCaffrey, the health, is he going to be all right? Now it's everybody else but McCaffrey. That's what we're looking at with this 3-1 team. And we'll have to make sure, because I'll say this, Purdy didn't look so great. He didn't look like he was moving at 100%. He hasn't been practicing. Jennings, not practicing. Pearsall, not practicing. And I'll say this, for those that have McCaffrey, you want these guys on the floor. You want these guys on the floor mixing basketball and football. You want these guys on the field. Imagine if it was a floor, some of those hard falls there of hardwood rather than grass or turf. It's almost like when you go and you look at like MetLife Stadium and you have their stupid turf versus an NBA hard court at that point. What's the difference? Both cause major injuries when you smack that floor. But you got to see them on the field. And we don't know that. And they've got that match against the Rams coming up. It's going to be very difficult to figure out who we can trust now. And this game is tomorrow against the Rams. That's what we're waiting on right now. Today is going to be very, very crucial. Good to see you, Fantasy Arnold. Fantasy Arnold. Always great to see Fantasy Arnold hanging out in the chat, too. We'll take your fantasy questions in just a little bit. Let's talk about, for those now, because everything's kind of stringing together here, let's talk about QB streamers for the week. And I mentioned Lamar Jackson being likely out, and probably knowing the Ravens and the bye being right there in the next couple of weeks, he's probably out for those next two games, but we want to wait for the official news. If I'm looking for a streamer, someone like, for me, that I'm looking at, and he might be out there, I don't know, in 10-team leagues for you 10-teamers out there, he might be out there. But if he is, take a look at CJ Stroud. Just take a look at him, because we saw him actually have a very nice performance last week against Tennessee. And now the question is, can he continue it? Here's the thing with this game coming up against Baltimore. The Jaxson factor not being there helps Houston a bit. And Houston will be in a position where they'll be able to throw. And Baltimore's defense hasn't been good. It hasn't been. They're giving up a lot, especially in the air. And that's where with CJ Stroud, who, let's face it, he's not going to get a lot of protection. He's always going to be on the run. So he's going to have to throw. And even with Lamar out, it takes out a lot with Lamar being out. They still have weapons, though. They still have guys that can end up bridging this gap, and they can win this game against Houston. But for Houston, it's looking good for CJ Stroud this week and the passing attack. And that's why I'm a bit interested. I mean, the guy's thrown for over 200 yards each of the last few weeks. The only problems are with CJ Stroud. You're not really seeing the touchdowns until we saw his first 2 passing touchdown game in week 4. So I don't think in 12-team leagues he's out there, but in 10-teamers, and I've looked on some league sites and everything, and you can't always trust the percentages. I kind of give like a 10% type of, error with that little wiggle room, because you have to take into account. And I talk to people who write waiver wire content about this all the time in the space everywhere, that you got to be careful, because those leagues that are inactive but were activated but no one's doing anything, those go into the pool of the percentage of how much the players owned. So that's why you got to be careful. That's why for me, when I used to write waiver wire content for NBA, I'd be looking at guys on both, let's say Yahoo and ESPN, that are 40%, maybe I'd sneak the old 42%er, but 42% or lower, not even 50%. Because again, I'm taking that 10%. Football, a little bit different than basketball. But that's how, by the way, you should be looking at these waivers and everything like that. You shouldn't just take it face value for the percentage that you're seeing. So CJ Stroud is somebody that you can look at in 10-team leagues. In 12-team leagues, here are your options here. I mentioned the Thursday night game. What about Matthew Stafford? What about him? We've seen just how locked in he is with his receivers going up against a banged up 49ers team. To me, I mean, coming off an excellent 3-touchdown outing, he was just amazing, over 30 fantasy points. And he did that against the Colts. Now, against the 49ers, if they get a lead, will they start just feeding the backs? They can. But for a streamer, bye week, or anyone dealing with the ongoing injuries to some of the other quarterbacks that are active, especially Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford is also someone that's interesting if all else fails, that I still see being out there in 12-team leagues. It's been very up and down. He's had games where he hasn't thrown multiple touchdown passes. That was week 1. And if he can lay off the interceptions a bit, then that's fine. He didn't throw a pick last week. So now going into this game, and by the way, let's just talk about this because you don't necessarily need a streaming quarterback to just be one and done and that's it. He also has Baltimore and Jacksonville coming up too. I like those matchups. I think it freaking back and forth, it's going to move in those games. So I also don't mind the 49ers game too. So that's maybe someone that if not this week, you need one more week for him to prove himself. That's fine. But for those that could be without Lamar Jackson now for the next few weeks, Stafford isn't a bad option. Happen to be facing Baltimore in week 6. The 49ers tomorrow night, they're banged up. So Matthew Stafford is an intriguing option. Speaking of intrigue, because they were very popular when it came to waiver pickups, and I got to give credit to Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com because I was ready to really utilize, because I just for context purposes, in my leagues, because I'm not afraid to admit this stuff, I'm having a tough time in my leagues this year. Last year when everybody else was like, boo-hoo, the injuries of receivers and whatnot, I was thriving. I had one of those years where I didn't suffer a major injury until Jalen Hurts got concussed at the end of the year, and then that took out my quarterback heading into playoff matchups and my championship. But outside of that, I had a very relatively unscathed kind of season. It's not the case this year. I got Jaxson in one. I got a share of Jaxson. I got 2 shares of Burrow that I'm trying to make up for. It's a lot, but there are still ways to work around it. And that's why, speaking of intrigue, the Giants options. Tyler Beaker was saying the other night on Elite Sports Game Time that while, yes, with Malik Neighbors out for the year, it opens up a wide range of target share. He did make some interesting comments. And that's instead of blowing your budget on these guys thinking you're walking into or you're bidding on someone that's going to be getting 10 targets a week, here's something to think about for those that invested in Wan'Dale Robinson if he was still out there, Darius Slayton, big play guy, Theo Johnson. The Giants will likely at this point become very run heavy. And we're going to see what Jaxson Dart can do. But one of the things about Jaxson Dart was his running ability. And we saw that. We got to see that. And I got to give major props. And this is why you watch the games. And I talked to him about it afterwards, too. Talked to him about it, too. Probably took a little bit of the sting out of the Ravens game last week. But Phil Backert, fantasyguru.com, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, does it all. Does content, betting, IDP content. Man wears many hats. Does an offense only fantasy baseball league. Has to deal with fan tracks like he's married to them. It's stupid. Like when these websites you pay for don't work and they've got bugs, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. Absolutely frustrating. The free sites, you're at the mercy. It's a free site. Yahoo, ESPN, free sites. But some of these other sites that you pay for, you want to get what you pay for there. Jaxson Dart, and Phil said he was going to rush for at least 50 yards. Rush for 54. Got into the end zone too. Amazing call by him last week on SiriusXM. But that's part of Jaxson Dart's game. And when I was looking him up and I was looking to see, well, okay, what did he do in school? All right, he's got that rushing ability too. Somebody else, by the way, who has that rushing ability that we're going to get to see now And it's been announced that he's going to try to get the start. And everybody has been calling for Joe Flacco's head. And especially when it comes to the Cleveland situation, when you've got Shedeur Sanders in the mix too, everybody's wondering what becomes of Shedeur Sanders. So the Cleveland Browns QB situation is always going to be an interesting side story that's going to gain steam like weeks like this, because Dillon Gabriel, who's gone to 3 colleges, he's going to be starting. Most recent out of Oregon. He'll be starting. He's a smaller quarterback. He's got speed and agility, though, and he's going to be taking off by himself. I'm actually interested, and this will be interesting to see what happens if he ends up vulturing Mr. Judkins this weekend in London. I'm very interested to see what happens there with that. But Dillon Gabriel's going to take over. One of those situations where we're going to have to wait and see. But Joe Flacco at this point just wasn't getting the offense running right. The Browns coaches saying that all along. The offense just isn't running right. That's why they're doing this right here. So with Dillon Gabriel, it'll be very interesting to see how much he takes off, because that's really what I'm looking for, kind of like I was with Jaxson Dart too. And Jaxson Dart, by the way, who will be starting for the rest of the season, he's someone that if he's got that dual threat, that's something else that's going to be added to the offensive mix, meaning if you've got a heavy dose, because Skattebo is going to get a ton of carries moving forward too. But if you've got Skattebo and you've got Jaxson Dart that's going to be taken off by himself, it is going to make this even more run heavy. And that's why we just got to be careful with these Giants options. We see the consistency. I'm chasing targets at this point. I start to see Wan'Dale Robinson get 8 to 10 targets per week for a few weeks. Okay, that's great. We got to be careful with some of these guys. Darius Slayton is someone that can break off a big play, can break off a big play. But will it happen? Can we put our trust in that in 3 to 4 targets? We'd like to think that he'd be in that 6 to 8 range, but we're all going to have to wait and see how that ends up working out. For the Cleveland Browns side of it, for Dillon Gabriel, who, by the way, I'm not suggesting to stream. Jaxson Dart stream, Dillon Gabriel, just keep a lookout, keep watch, see what he could do in this matchup. It's not going to be easy. But with Dillon Gabriel, from everything I've read, from everything I've seen with the tape that I've been watching, it's going to be a lot of short passing for him. A lot of short passing. And no Cedric Tillman on IR. So when you think about it, who is going to be at an advantage here? The tight end certainly will be. Now, the big question is, because you've got Njoku there, but Harold Fannin kind of used all over the place. We saw him get a little bit more involved in the snap share. But then somebody else who we got to start maybe taking a look at just a little bit when it comes to the snap share. I mean, for the Cleveland Browns with no Cedric Tillman now, beyond Jerry Jeudy, someone that we can start looking at is Isaiah Bond. And I'm not saying necessarily, maybe if you're in a very deep format, 16-teamer, then maybe you look just to pick him up here to see what kind of target share he can end up getting. But Isaiah Bond, 4+ targets now in both of his last 2 weeks here, got targeted 6 times. So really what we're looking at, and again, we need to kind of see how we're doing here, but with no Cedric Tillman, you got to be thinking we see a little bit more of Bond. We saw Fannin snap share go up. So if anything, for the Browns tight end situation, Fannin not as much a tight end. Jeff Mans has said that on Elite Sports, 2 p.m. Eastern, by the way, on Fantasy Sports Radio. Jeff Mans, Ray Flowers. But all of a sudden, some of these other options beyond Jerry Jeudy become intriguing. I just wonder if Dillon Gabriel is going to have trouble hitting Jerry Jeudy at the start, because I'm in a guillotine league. And yes, we're chasing volume in those leagues, but really when it came to who was one of the top wide receiver options out there still, and again, this is a team where every week someone gets eliminated, Jerry Jeudy was out there, and I just was thinking to myself, well, I could go with a Jerry Jeudy, but is Gabriel going to be able to reach him consistently more than 1 or 2 times? Hard to tell. Short passes. Get ready. Fannin, Bond, it's those guys. You better get ready for those short passes, because that's really, from what I've been seeing, what Dillon Gabriel is going to be able to do, and he will also take off just a little bit too. So that's the situation with the Browns. Other quarterbacks that you can look to stream. I mentioned Stafford. I mentioned Stroud. I mentioned Jaxson Dart. The only other player that I can really see out there and that I'm looking at that I've got a share of going in and I want to attack Tampa Bay is Sam Darnold. And that's another one where you want a little bit more than what you're getting. But is he throwing a bunch of picks every game? No, he's not. Can he get you in a game like this against Tampa Bay? About 250 yards, he can. He can. Quarterback's done well against them. I think he can with a couple of scores. And if Sam Darnold ends up scoring, let's say, 20 to 22 fantasy points for a stopgap, I'm not saying that he automatically becomes that guy, but maybe for the next couple of weeks, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, at least Tampa Bay matchup is good enough there. And if they're going to be blitzing him a lot, they're in that matchup in Tampa Bay. Also got to give credit to Tyler Beaker. Tyler Beaker, with the way Tampa Bay plays their defense, Sam Darnold could be at a little bit of an advantage there. Does very well against their style. So credit, and that's why you are part of the elite mafia because of that. So Sam Darnold becomes another intriguing spot start. I've been trying to, and I haven't really been willing to do this, but I've been trying this year to see what it's like trading for a quarterback. I've got one league where it's my family league, 12-team league, casual league, but you've got teams in there that have 2, if not 3 quarterbacks. Most leagues, I wouldn't make the trade. I would just stream, and that's about it. I lost Burrow in a couple of leagues. Now I've lost Jaxson for a couple of weeks now, and the streaming's been all right. Swung and missed on Geno last week. It happens when you stream. But someone was offering me, one of my cousins was actually offering me, this is a league where I'm loaded with running backs. I picked up guys off the waiver wire, and it's 2 RBs, 1 flex. I'm loaded running backs. Only need to start 2 wide receivers, so a lot of my depth is from those RBs. And my cousin, who actually has Jaden Daniels and Drake May, we were trying to work out a deal all night last night, trying to figure out a way because he really wanted Quinshon Judkins. So with that, for me, trading a big piece of RB real estate in depth, yeah, for a quarterback, very daunting. But when you're looking at a waiver wire, and this was, by the way, before waivers ran, so I was looking on the wire, and you're looking at guys like Darnold's out there, Rattler's out there, Stafford's not out there, though. Jaxson Dart was out there. I end up getting Jaxson Dart. But if Jaxson Dart ends up going through some struggles, yeah, I mean, I have Carson Wentz too, but with McCarthy, they're hoping he's going to be practicing. The bottom line is I'm in a very unstable situation, and I'm 1-3. So in that kind of situation where everything's context, I'm trying to make that trade. Some of my other running backs, just so you know, for this particular situation, include Ashton Genty, the Denver running backs. I've got Pacheco, but I also picked up Woody Marks. So it's one of those things where I'm really considering making the trade for Drake May. At first, it was a 1v1 trade, and I thought about it because Drake May, good schedule coming up. Yeah, he's got that bye week 14, but whatever. I pick up someone to handle for the week. When you're 1-3, it is a little bit daunting. Jaden Daniels, look, we know how good he is. We know the draft capital that it took to get him, but at the same time, now a little bit damaged goods there. So I was kind of hoping that he throws somebody in to help secure a little bit more of my running back depth if I trade in Judkins. Now, we were going back and forth, and I ended up offering to give back one of my running backs where I'd upgrade a little bit still at running back on the second player, but I'd be trading the big production back for one of those quarterbacks. Normally wouldn't do that. But my trade partner is having trouble getting there. And this is the problem. He has a big need. He needs running backs. He needs a guy, established volume guy that could do stuff. Not just do like what Tony Pollard does, 20 carries, 60, 70 yards, yay, where you're begging him to score, begging him to hit in the end zone. My cousin, it's almost like the trade is too much. It's making sense. It's too, I don't want to call it even, but it just makes sense. We both have a need, and we're both giving each other depth back in the process, but he's having trouble processing that because he needs to win the trade. and you're still winning the trade, even if you don't rip off your trade partner. That's why last week I went on that whole rant about trading and even trading. And for me, even if I give up the better player, if I'm addressing a need, normally I wouldn't have to worry about stuff like this. But again, I've got multiple teams that have 3 quarterbacks rostered. So the market's not there. Someone else gets hurt, I could be screwed. There may be 4 guys out there right now on waivers. That's it, 4 or 5. So that's why, for me, I'm considering making that deal. But I say all this because, once again, don't worry if you trade the better player, as long as you're fulfilling a need. That's what I say when I mean trade out of need, not desire. That's what that is. Sometimes you have to give up the better player, but if you have a lot of depth, and look, with running backs, and I guess you could say anyone in football, your depth is never too safe, because in a week's time, you can lose 2 guys, full contact sport. So that's why, if you have to give up the better player, sometimes where you're loaded in depth, but you really are desperate at a position, really desperate, you got to do it sometimes. So now it's kind of still going back and forth. Can I ride Jaxson Dart? We'll have to wait and see what ends up transpiring and happening right there. Looking at some DFS values, I'll go over some of the DFS values there after talking QB, streaming here on Fantasy Sports Daily. Ray Flowers will be back tomorrow, noon Eastern, same time, same place. Some of the DFS values, and I've been playing a little bit more on DraftKings. And again, I'll say this, and it's going to be the same with basketball too. I really came into Fantasy Guru saying cash games, cash. Just very hard to do so anymore. Pay lines have gone up like crazy. You have to worry about differentiating when it comes to your DFS lineup. And that's why, for me, even in those 50-50s, I'm still trying to think about how to make the lineup somewhat different. But part of that is you got to take ownership and ownership potential into account here. And for me, I've been looking at some of these value options, including some of my favorites for the week at the quarterback position. I mean, Justin Fields, the 2 Justins, not just because my name's Justin, but Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, both of them in very interesting spots going up against Dallas and Washington. Now, with Justin Herbert, it hasn't been pretty for him at all. And naturally, I feel a little bit safer going after Justin Fields on the main slate. By the way, I'm talking about the main slate. So with the injuries that we're dealing with already from there, that's kind of where I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at the 2 Justins, Fields and Herbert, mainly Fields though. Another game that I'm looking at, by the way, for production is that Giants-Saints game. But here's the thing. So Cam Skattebo is going to be very heavily owned. He's coming off 25 carries. Giants just lost Neighbors. So there are times where you eat the chalk, and then there are times where you maybe fade it a little bit. This is one of those situations that at 6,000, if you have the right combination, you go with that wide receiver heavy, then maybe we could find better options than him. For instance, like I know Justin Fields is back, but Breece Hall is somebody else that, Cam Skattebo's, we know that he's going to get volume. Safe floor there. What's the ceiling going to be? But a lot of people are going to have Cam Skattebo. And a lot of people react to injuries. That's what it comes down to. Maybe looking at not the next guy that's necessarily the replacement, but somebody else. Also, it takes ownership off of other players, which is good here. So for me, that's why when looking on DraftKings at the running back spot, with knowing what we know, and again, nice like injuries that we're dealing with for the week, it's just going to be crazy at the spot. Breece Hall, someone that I'm looking at. I'm also looking at 5,400, and this guy is going to be popular because not only was he utilized on the ground about 16, 17 times, but also in the air too. Woody Marks. I mean, we're seeing more and more of Woody Marks here. And going up against Baltimore that's allowing production, I like that. So we can make the decision of going with Skattebo at 6,000, but Woody Marks is sitting there at 5,400. And we could try to save the money just a little bit. And the Texans, I don't want to say, but with Baltimore, with the Lamar Jackson situation, normally you would think that in that kind of matchup, the Texans are going to be behind by 2.5 scores. They're going to have to throw against Baltimore. But between Baltimore's defense being a bit suspect, also they're banged up all over the place, and not having Lamar, very likely, we're waiting all but certain. Now all of a sudden Houston stays in the game and they utilize that run, establish that run, and they could take advantage. And that's why Woody Marks is very intriguing to me and someone I'm absolutely looking at when it comes to DFS for that main slate this week. You can also look at some of the other options too. You want to look at an Nico Collins. He's priced up, but that's what happens when you have some of these values. Those are other directions that you could go. I want at least a piece of Houston this week. I want a piece of Houston, and I want a piece of that Giants-Saints game. So that's where I'm looking. Someone else that I think is back in play, speaking of having a piece, Juwan Johnson, I think, going up against the Giants, I think that he'll be back in action once again. I know it hasn't been great. You want to see more targets there. I feel like that he'll be picked on a little bit. Now going up against a very lighter opponent defensively, Buffalo, not the easiest. So Juwan Johnson, I think, is back in play, and we'll start to see him back in that 6 to 8 target range. We saw a nice connection and rapport between Johnson and Rattler that Jeff Mans identified a few weeks ago. Very smart right there, helping out. Then we can look at for some of the other value plays if you're looking at the main slate on DraftKings. Again, a lot of people are going to be on Cam Skattebo. There are people, because he was a hot waiver pickup, one of the hottest running back waiver pickups was Kendre Miller. Is he going to be getting more involved in the offense? That is going to draw some fear for Alvin Kamara. So maybe Alvin Kamara draws a little bit of lighter ownership against the Giants. And again, I want a piece of that. And if I want to be a little bit differently, I could go that direction. Chris Olave, very cheap. Just say that, very cheap. But really the options I like that I'm looking at, and I think could go a little bit under the radar, a little bit in this matchup, Kamara, Juwan Johnson, because you're going to have a lot of people being on those hot pickups. You're going to have a lot of people trying to be smart. I mean, when you're looking at it here, Wan'Dale Robinson sitting there at 5,300. When you're looking at Slayton, 4,300. Theo Johnson is going to be one at 3,400 on that DraftKings main slate. And look, Theo Johnson, probably going to be very popular. He hit the end zone last week on 5 targets, actually 5 targets in 2 of his last 3 games. So there's going to draw some interest there. So maybe that's an area as well where you can be different if you want someone from the Giants, because everyone, and I'm very interested on Friday's Elite Sports Show, if Jeff Mans ends up really prioritizing Cam Skattebo, thinking of more of a single entry GPP mindset. Is Skattebo's ownership going to be too high? That's kind of where I'm stuck. But we know one thing. We know the volume's going to be there. We know that Jaxson Dart is going to be taken off at times. So that's also going to impact this offense too. So that's why I want to try to be careful with the Giants side of this. The Saints side of it, I'm in. I've talked about Kamara, especially Juwan Johnson. I'm in on both of them. Absolutely in. Final value plays that I'll talk about here, and we got to make sure that we're watching any kind of injuries. Speaking of injuries, we saw that gruesome leg injury for Tyreek Hill. So now what does that mean for Miami? Because when it comes to them, that's something that we're going to have to make sure that we're watching out for in that Carolina game. That I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see if Carolina could bring a little bit of offense here. Tedero McMillan is someone that I'm a little bit intrigued with going into this matchup against Miami. But Malik Washington, hot pickup. A lot of people are going to be, which is why I think maybe there's a chance that Juwan Johnson doesn't draw high ownership. I really don't think so, but you're going to be seeing someone like Darren Waller coming off a multi-score game. That's someone that's going to be popular among the players because they're very reactionary. So maybe a Juwan Johnson is a nice pivot off of there. But with no Tyreek Hill, Malik Washington, we got to expect that he'll get more targets in this offense, 5+ in 2 of the 4 games. So we'll have to see against Carolina, who, let's not forget, I don't want to start praising the Panthers just yet. But I go back to what we didn't see from the Falcons offense against them, and that was just stunning and shocking to me So I'm not going to all of a sudden say they're a cakewalk. They just lost 42-13 against New England. We saw Drake May carve them up. But will Tua be able to do that here? That'll be interesting, but Malik Washington is someone that you can look at. He will draw some ownership. He's sub 4K on DraftKings, but ultimately you got to be thinking that they're going to have to throw to someone beyond Achane. And I think that Malik Washington is that guy, is going to be that guy. And a lot of people are going to be looking at Darren Waller, and even a lot of people are going to be looking at Waddle too. Waddle, he's been pretty consistent with the targets there. It's hard to figure out a ceiling for him. But you think naturally he's going to be in that 6 to 8 target range moving forward. And it's just hard to tell what he's going to be able to do with those targets. Will he get the yardage? Will he get into the end zone? A lot of people at 5,400 on DK are going to be on him. You can give me a follow at Fensty Sports, FENSTY Sports on X and Instagram. And let's see very quickly here. Like the chef is asking, do I drop JCM for DeMercado there? Man, that's a hodgepodge too when it comes to Washington. But yeah, again, we're going to have to see how this all plays out there. But there's got to be somebody else on your bench that maybe you could drop instead, because I'm not fully in on giving up on him just yet. But DeMercado now obviously prioritized here. And we were talking about the injuries issues before when it came to Arizona, which all of a sudden started to really pop up this morning. Well, now we know for sure here, as of course the chef said, that Trey Benson is going on IR. So they lost James Conner for the season. Trey Benson now on IR. So now you're looking at, yes, DeMercado. So, Chef, I'll say this. If you're absolutely desperate, you have nobody else and you need to do it, because when it comes to Washington, you still have a Chris Rodriguez who is their very big time split. Daniel's going to be back. He's going to do his own thing too. Then if you need to for desperation, yes, but there's no major ceiling on this situation when it comes to Arizona. And remember this too, Kyler Murray can run as well on his own. So he can take off if he needs to. And that means, is DeMercado locked into 13 to 15 carries? Unsure I could say that. They've got Carter there too that they can mix and match, because they didn't plan at this point, this early in the season, to be without an extended period of time. Both running backs, one for the season in Connor, and now Trey Benson on IR. We'll say this, was talking about Daniels too, that Jaden Daniels right now looking good, being hurt, now coming back. The knee seems to be feeling better for him. So we should see him practice. We should see him make his return. You can find all my work at fantasyguru.com tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, DFS NBA Discord chat at fantasyguru.com. I will be there, be talking all things NBA. We'll have some content coming out on the site over the next few days for you season-long players. I talk about it. I mentioned kidding, of course, the fabulous 500 people playing season-long still when it comes to fantasy basketball. But where you want to win, we've got you covered, especially when it comes to NFL, all the sports, NBA too. It's been great hanging out with all of you. Thank you for stopping by. Tomorrow, Ray Flowers back, same time, same place, same channel, Fantasy Sports Daily, here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by the good old FG, fantasyguru.com.